Hello everybody, welcome back to Theje's Notebook Review. I'm your host, Joel Michael, and what I have for you today is from... This is the NV13 Evo edition. What makes a laptop Evo certified, one might wonder? It has to be thin, under 3 pounds, 1080p touchscreen, battery life of up to 9 hours of light use, at least 16 gigs of RAM, NVMe storage, Thunderbolt 4, and has to be able to wake up from sleep in 1 second. I might not have gotten all the exact qualifications, but those are at least the most important ones. You can normally find this NV for about $750 to $1,000 depending on the specs. Is it worth spending that much on a small laptop with a wannabe gaming GPU? Let's find out after this reminder to like, subscribe, and tell me how much you like the new apartment down below. This then is the HP NV13 Evo. It has the Intel Core i5-1135G7 CPU with 4 cores, 8 threads that clocks 8 megabytes of L3 cache up to 4.2 gigahertz and eats only 15 watts. This CPU comes packed with Intel Iris Xe graphics that sports 80 execution units, down from the 96 you'll find in the i7 chips. Supporting the CPU is 16 gigs of dual-channel LPDDR4 memory and a 512 gig NVMe SSD. All these bits sit underneath a 13.3-inch 1080p glossy LCD touchscreen and are powered by a 51 watt-hour lithium polymer battery. The AC adapter has 9 feet of cord out of the box and has its own DC plug, so it won't take up your FireWire port to charge your device. Oh, I meant Thunderbolt. FireWire. There's a blast from the past. If you want to charge this laptop on the go with a power bank, there's nothing standing in your way, but HP doesn't list it as a feature, so your mileage might vary. And a longer from-the-wall cord can be employed, so you can put up to 12 feet of distance between yourself and a wall. Battery life with the HP NV13 is just as good as you might expect from a lithium polymer battery and electro-sipping CPU. I was able to stream video for 5 hours just by switching to battery saver, which is almost enough for the Snyder Cut and the obligatory 30-minute nap I took in the middle of it. If internet working, you can get just under 9 hours from a full charge with battery saver on, or more if drastic measures are taken, like going into airplane mode. Or Witcher 3 can drain it in an hour and 45 minutes, which might not sound like a lot, but compared to a bona fide gaming laptop, that's impressive. Another impressive thing about this laptop is the build quality. It's all aluminum with a muted flex that's impossible to manifest unless you're actually trying to have it manifest. Another almost invisible aspect to the build are fingerprints. Aside from the glossy touchscreen, the chassis will be a challenge to stain and even less of a challenge to keep clean, excluding, again, the reflective touchscreen. At least the display doesn't wobble, and I don't think it could to save its life. Does that make it feel expensive? No, not really. I know I didn't explain that well enough yet, but don't worry, we'll get there. For now, let's just see what all those holes in the side do. On the right is a micro SD card reader, USB 3.2A that can charge your phone, and the power hole. On the left is the headset in, a second USB 3.2A for a total of 2 standard USBs, and Thunderbolt 4. So there's no lock slot and no HDMI, not even a mini HDMI. You are 100% expected to buy a Thunderbolt hub to use this thing as anything but a laptop. At least it's easy to dock, one plug in or out, and you're home or gone. It's very useful for mocking DC movies and making a clean getaway. 2 T5 Torque and 2 hidden Phillips head screws are what keeps this notebook together. Prying it apart is most easily done when you start in the back, and the bottom cover comes off and is replaced without much fuss. Inside we see that the battery man stretches across the entire width of the notebook. One heat pipe and fan that exhausts into the display is all it takes to keep cool, and the only upgradable part is the NVMe SSD. That's right, you can't upgrade the RAM, but with 16 gigs, you should be good for a while anyway. Moving on to the keyboard, it's here where the first sign of cost-cutting shows its ugly head. Don't get me wrong, it's not a bad keyboard, but compared to the rest of the build quality, the keyboard is the first thing that reminds you that this notebook ain't perfect. My fingers tend to get stuck on the left shift more often than not, and the keys put up a decent fight before they're pressed, making me miss more strokes than average. How much noise it makes is up to the typist. Heavy fingers can make a good racket, especially with the amount of reverb echoing through the body, but light typists such as myself can squeak by with low decibels. Dedicated home and in-page scrolling keys line the right side and don't have secondary functions. Very classy. Even more classy would be the white backlight if the font on the keys was bold and not so skinny that some keys, like P in my case, are gunked up to the point where the backlight can barely get through. It also fades in, but doesn't fade lower or fade off. Okay, nitpicking aside, the backlight does what it sets out to do, it doesn't get in the way, and it doesn't look tacky. The touchpad could be worse. It definitely gets in the way when I'm typing on my lap because it's huge and rather sensitive. The buttons sink a little too far on the bottom, but right-click isn't too hard to find, probably because it's more wide than tall. The acceleration is predictable, gestures work great, and there's not much else to complain about. I can't fault this one for not having physical buttons, cause where are you gonna put them? There's no hotkey to disable the touchpad, but I did figure out how to toggle it off when a mouse is plugged in, which I couldn't manage in Windows 11 for my last review. That's right, it took me 2 notebook reviews to remember how to walk backwards. Thanks, Microsoft. Moving our eyes up, we can see there's a screen here. Even though it stretches only 13.3 inches diagonally, there's still 1080p's worth of pixels packed into it. For being such a small laptop, the tilt factor is a bit lacking compared to others, and as to why the touchscreen is a baffling mystery, seeing as how a tablet mode is nowhere to be seen. Must have been a requirement for the Evo certification. At least the colors never change at an angle, and the brightness only dips a little when viewed askew. Don't expect color accuracy, but do expect a pleasant show as the brightness goes a couple ticks over what's comfortable and colors pop. Granted, there's nothing reflecting in the glossy surface. Also, compared to a high refresh rate panel, the response time tends to lag behind a bit, and ghosting is not a bug, just a feature. Everything gaming aside, it's still a blast to watch videos on. And that's not just because of the display, but also the speakers. They're loud enough and have a comprehensive frequency response with a respectable and balanced amount of treble and bass. In order to get there, though, there's a lot of software trickery to pull sounds into frequencies they don't belong. So while audio sounds crisp and robust, background noises in movies are louder than they should be, and when loud noises happen, everything else gets hushed in an unnatural way. This will happen in movies and video games. You can disable the software trickery, but trust me, the alternative is dull to all hell, and you'll be begging for the unbalanced volume and clarity in a matter of 0.3 seconds. The bass in Calm Like a Bomb by Rage for the Machine is present and accounted for, and the deep bass in A Perfect Circle's The Package is audible and almost clear at full volume, but that frequency compensation comes in hard when the heavy guitar hits or just plucks in the upper register. When I reviewed the MSI GE66 Raider, I found those speakers to be very dull, and everything is limited to the mid-range, no highs and no lows. I'd rather have those speakers for playing games just because the audio is perfectly balanced. But for watching movies on a laptop, 10 out of 10 would prefer these speakers and software every time. This is a test of the webcam on the HP NV13 Evo edition. This is an excellent lighting, the motion is really good, and the microphone quality is actually really good too. Very impressed with this webcam. Plus, HP has a nice little app that you can run on the side that puts a big ring of light on the picture itself to help cool, warm, or just plain increase the amount of lighting on your face. And I have a big yellow ring on the screen right now, which makes the colors seem a little bit more warm than they would. And even though I do have a bunch of LED lights directly in my face, the ring does make a little bit of difference. So pretty useful. Thanks, HP! And here's a test of the webcam in poor lighting. All I have is my lonely kitchen lights on, plus HP's special app. This time it's a white ring, and it is making a big difference. It allowed the frame rate of the video itself to increase, so not half bad. Color accuracy is actually pretty good too. Let me turn HP's app off. And that's how much of a difference it makes. So it's very, very useful. System performance of the HP NV13 is an Intel Evo requirement. 16 gigs of RAM and a highfalutin NVMe SSD mixed together a package of supreme agility and responsiveness. Sure, the 15-watt Core i5 can't throw a punch at a CPU benchmark to save its life, but if you don't do heavy workloads like compiling code or exporting 4K video, the dual-channel memory will help the CPU do all the web browsing, video watching, and task switching your little PC heart desires, even with battery saver on. Why bring up the dual-channel memory on this laptop? Because it's rare in the non-gaming, non-creative space of the laptop market. It's quite the thing that Intel tried with its Intel Evo certification to bring it more into the mainstream, and it really shines here, especially when talking about onto gaming. Let's get the negatives out of the way first because there are quite a few positives to cover. Is it good at gaming? No, not even close. The frame rates are terra low at 1080p, and if a detail level is any notch above null, it will be sorely paid for, especially the texture settings because we still don't get dedicated VRAM. So what are the positives then? Well, it's a big improvement over last gen's Iris Pro, that's for sure. Although when I reviewed Iris Pro, it was on a Lenovo laptop without dual-channel memory and only 12 gigs of RAM, but maybe that's what Intel is aiming for rising above this time around with their Evo certification. It's certainly helping this HP along. This is Witcher 3 in 1600 by 900 with no details. It's getting a solid 40 FPS on average. If you turn on VSync and limit the FPS to 30, you're looking at a gaming experience that beats the Nintendo Switch version, that's for damn sure. Which brings me to my next point. Always turn on VSync with Iris graphics. I know, VSync is the bane of response times and frame rates everywhere, but games on Iris always look so choppy without it. The same was true with Iris Pro from last gen. As far as temperatures are concerned, don't be concerned about temperatures. I don't think the CPU could put out heat if it tried, and the fan noise will never be annoying because all of the noise is brilliantly channeled into the display, so you can only hear most of the fan noise if your ears are positioned directly above the monitor. And gaming on battery power? You only lose 10% of performance, it's barely noticeable. Witcher 3 still runs at 30 FPS in 1600 by 900 on battery power, reliably and consistently. But what about an i7 model with 96 execution cores, you might ask? That's just 10% more performance over this. It's probably worth it if the i7 model is only $50 more, but you're not talking a whole tier of improvement with an i7. For the bottom line, does the HP NV13 give enough oomph to satisfy its market value? Hell yeah. At $750, it's just perfect. You can buy a larger notebook with a GPU that's decent at gaming but can barely go anywhere, or you can buy this that's excellent at almost everything else, is especially portable, and can kinda play games. For example, I just reviewed the Acer Nitro 5 with the GTX 1650. I'd take this HP NV13 over that any day. In conclusion, students get 2 thumbs up, not more, not less. It can be found for under $800, is super portable, and has enough speed to put up a fight against MacBooks. It's far behind a MacBook thanks to the par for the course display and peripherals, but it sticks it to Apple in the value department. Can't beat it, just join it. Casual gamers can try it out. It's definitely not as much power as you want. The aforementioned Acer Nitro 5 with the GTX 1650 is worlds better than this. The thing about the GTX 1650 though is that it leaves you hungry for more, whereas with Iris Xe, expectations are kept low, and with that, you're thankful for what you can get. You see, you just gotta mind f*** yourself a little bit. You can also try playing competitively with this thing and just plain get f***. Your choice. Desktop replacement users will run out of holes to fill real quick, even with a Thunderbolt dock, which, by the way, are expensive enough for a decent one. Might as well get something bigger with a real processor and display outputs. Home users should get off their ass and buy one. I don't care what you have now, this is a better value. Did you see my video where I saw this for $600 at Costco? No? Well, subscribe, you lazy bastard. I can't afford to drive to your goddamn house and ring your doorbell every time there's an awesome sale. I got a V6, and gas ain't cheap. That adds up, motherfucker. This has been a review of the HP Envy 13 Evo Edition here on Theje's Notebook Review. My videos are boosted by your comments, so let me know if you like the video with a thumbs up emoji or chocolate ice cream emoji or something like that. Even if you disagreed with it, let me know that too. I'll take them all. And of course, like, share, and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and you guys have a good night.